I'm Susan Branscombe. I'm the host of this podcast, Food Addiction, the Problem and the Solution, Esther Helga's INFACT School podcast, infactschool.com. On the podcast today, we have as a guest, Barney Reason. Welcome, Barney.
Hi there.
Hi. It's great to have you here. Yeah. I'm going to introduce you, and then we'll get started in some great questions about your experience in food addiction recovery. Barney lives in the UK and is a recovered food addict, and we will talk about other addictions he's faced and using recovery programs and treatment centers. Barney, you're like many of our guests on the podcast. You have experienced the perils and negative consequences of your addiction, substance use disorder, food, and recovered, and now you give back in this. You help others recover from addiction. So you wear a number of hats.
Yeah,
Barney is I'm going to go ahead and introduce you and we'll get started. Barney is a seasoned therapist, coach, and facilitator who brings a powerful blend of personal experience and professional expertise to everything he does. Barney works with our podcast sponsor, Shift, Recovery by Acorn, foodaddiction.com. Listeners, you'll hear an ad by Shift on this podcast. Barney began his recovery journey in 1987 through facing and overcoming significant challenges. He's developed a deep well of insight and empathy that he now uses to support others on their own paths. He holds a globally recognized certification in food addiction treatment, and that is through the INFACT School, the owner of this podcast. Barney has worked extensively in both residential facilities and one-on-one settings, helping individuals and families heal from addiction and trauma. And Barney, you were a commodities trader and lived in ashram for 5 years, so you have quite a diverse background. He is an entrepreneur, having founded multiple organizations across financial markets, media, property sectors, earning a strong reputation for leadership, development, and coaching. Passionate, compassionate, and driven to make a difference, Barney is dedicated to empowering people to transform their lives, their families, and their communities. So I look forward to your story today, and welcome again.
Thank you. Lovely welcome.
Yeah. Well, you were like many others of us and people that we interview on the program. You have a recognized food addiction that you've gone through recovery, and you have other addictions. And I think there were drugs and alcohol. You said you got clean and sober, I think in 1987. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. No, I was a tender 25-year-old when I...
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. Tell me about that. Like what were your drugs of choice or alcohol?
Life was pretty chaotic. You know, I'd always used something to change the way that I felt. Even as a child, I'd use food or I'd use fantasy. And then when I was, a young teenager, I discovered that, I could control the way I felt and I could control how much I ate if I took various substances. And so it led to me eventually seeking help, but it was chaotic. My life was very, like a lot of addicts, was very in turmoil, in upheaval, because of the substances, but also just because of my thinking. That I couldn't somehow sort out what was true and what was false. I lived in this sort of fantasy world that things were going to turn out okay without me doing anything to make them turn out okay. And that was kind of difficult to live with. But I'm really grateful I found drugs in a way, because they brought me to my bottom. They brought me to a point where I actually knew that I needed some help. Much younger than most people.
How old were you?
I was 25. I was
25. Okay.
And had my 26th birthday in rehab, in treatment. So.
Fantastic. Yeah. What were you, you talked about fantasizing as though things were going to work out. Many of us in addictions often go to negative thinking. It sounds like you maybe were in denial that things are okay. This is okay.
Yeah,
What? Yeah.
yeah. I was in total denial. Really, I couldn't really assess what I was doing accurately.
Hmm.
I had I had blind spots when it came to actually looking at myself. I could judge other people fairly
Yeah.
fairly well and accurately, and condemn them in my own mind. But I found it difficult to do it with myself. I was either feeling absolutely disgusting and full of self remorse and self loathing, uh, or I thought I was better than everybody else. I was
Mm.
never, I was never, in the middle. And in some ways, you can say that they're the same thing. I was either
Hmm.
contempt for myself or contempt for other people,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
uh, and so I was very angry with the world. I had some reason to be upset and sort of disgruntled, but in other
Yeah.
ways, I had no reason to be. I was successful. I was working in an industry that was fabulously well paid.
Hmm.
I was excited by life in some respect,
Yeah.
and yet I was trapped in my addiction.
Yeah. No, I get it. Many of us say who are addicted, I came in with I was an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. And then we
Yeah.
see that in addicts a lot. What was the chaos going
And,
on?
yeah, and that I think it's the same thing. The low self esteem and high ego, I
Hmm.
think, comes from the same place. It comes from actually, it comes from a place of not being enough and not
Yeah.
feeling like you
Right.
deserve something. And
Right.
the ego is there to protect me. It was your ego is there to protect you, and
Hmm.
it's also a fantastic tool. The ego, it gets a lot of stuff done.
Yes. Right.
So it gets bad press, I think, ego, and
It
yet
does.
yet at the same time, it's uncomfortable when we're burdened with this contradictorily high ego and low self-esteem.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So what was your
We
question? You were asking a question then about something else, and I wouldn't. I,
chaos.
yeah,
We're going to talk about your childhood, but we can start with that now if you'd like. You said the drug served a purpose for you, and it often does when we want to replicate perhaps drama, instability in our childhoods. What was the chaos?
well, I had a catalogue of adverse childhood experiences, as they're
Yes.
called nowadays,
Yes.
which childhood abuse, basically child abuse of different types, from sexual, physical,
Mm.
emotional. Uh, we were fairly neglected in some ways as children, me and my siblings,
Hmm.
and so
Neglected how?
well, we didn't have we had holes in our clothes, and we'd be. My dad was a entrepreneur himself and was either up or down. So one minute we'd go from a 30-bedroom mansion when he was doing well to a bedsit, student lodging type bedsits in
Mm.
South East London. Joe, it would change so dramatically.
Hmm.
So that the insecurity that came with that, of not knowing what was happening next, where we were going to be living. I lived in 16 houses in first 16 years of my life.
Yeah,
So
that's a
there
lot of
was
instability.
a lot of instability, and that feeling of going to new schools and new places to
Right.
live and all the rest of it. I managed to cover how anxious I felt, I think, quite well in some respects.
Hmm.
Yet at the same time, inside, it felt like I was an alien living on a different planet. It felt
Yeah.
like I didn't belong.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And we talk about childhood trauma, and what is that trauma? sometimes it's not what happened, the moving around, the going to new schools, the roller coaster of having money, not having money. It's how you felt. It's the trauma
Absolutely.
is how you felt, right?
And the trauma is actually the break from self, I believe. The break from actually knowing that I'm an okay human being and I'm spectacularly special in my own way. Uh, and it's a spiritual break of being able to be close to oneself.
Right.
So I never trusted myself like I didn't trust the world.
Yeah.
So I couldn't sit with any feelings. I thought that if I had feelings, I'd somehow expire.
Right.
And this is as a child too. I had to get rid of my feelings, whether it would be playing football obsessively or riding my bike or indeed, doing other things as a young kid
Yeah.
to avoid how I felt. Food was one of my first real obvious escapes.
Yeah.
Uh,
To feel
like
better, right? To
feel a little different,
feel.
a little
Yeah.
better,
Shift it. Yeah.
not feel that fear of
Hmm.
being in feelings. I was terrified of just feeling.
Hmm. Yeah, I was too, and I share this with you that I wasn't told that feelings were okay. It wasn't okay to feel. Just strap yourself up by your bootstraps and move on. And so when parents do that with us, and your parents, that they don't tell us it's okay to feel, and we're human, we need to feel, and they don't show us unconditional love, like we're okay in the world, then there starts the trauma, right? There starts the propensity to
Yeah,
addiction.
maybe. I think there's a lot of pieces to addiction,
Yes. Yeah, I
and
agree.
but yes, I think that it all adds to the soup.
Yeah, it
And
does.
to use a food analogy, like a good food addict would, you know, life is a variety of soups, and
Right. Or
we have
pizza or chips or
right, we have to be careful how
right.
those soups are made, otherwise they can end up tasting pretty bad.
Right. I mean, but the point is, I mean, yeah, addictions are complicated. It's a brain thing for many of us that our brains react differently than others with substances, with behavioral addictions. Um, but our childhoods can often play into it. There are plenty of food addicts and alcoholics out there that had pretty normal, childhoods. Nonetheless, they are addicted. So we don't want to broad brush this with
No,
something, but
absolutely not. And yet at the same time, I think there has to be a sort of an intrigue as to, wow, I think that, as a young child, I think that I've found a solution with various behaviors
mhm,
and various things, whether it be, food or drugs or whatever it is. But once we've found it, we think that, oh, this is the solution. And I keep going back to it because it worked once or worked
yeah,
twice or worked 10 times. But does it still work for me today? I'm not sure that it carried on working
hmm,
very long, but I thought that it would.
yeah. Well,
Uh,
food and drugs were our solution, right? For me, it was alcohol.
right,
Alcohol and food
that's
was my
right.
solution, and frankly, it worked pretty darn well, right?
Absolutely. But as a young child, I was desperately looking to escape. I didn't want to be in the world that I was in,
Right.
uh, for whatever reason. And interestingly, my parents had a very good family friend, Dr. James Willis, who wrote two of the uh, sort of textbooks for medical students to learn about addiction. And in this book, there were photos of drug addicts on the street, gouging out, asleep. And as a child, as a sort of 8, 9-year-old, I thought, wow, that looks good. That sort of escape looks exciting and it looks like what I'm after. I want to escape like that.
Hmm.
So there was an allure behind it. I was always fascinated by alcohol and people being drunk and all the rest of it. And I wanted it as soon as I could do it. So I started drinking at a very young age,
Like what?
like 7, 8.
Oh, that
Uh,
is early.
and, I got very, very drunk at a social gathering when I was about 7 or 8 and was forced to drink salt water. So I threw up everywhere
Mm,
and stuff. And yet, I remember the feeling, thinking, "Yes, please, this
right.
is this is what I'm after."
Hmm.
This sort of, it calmed my thoughts. It
Right.
let me exist in a way that I couldn't exist without something. I
Right.
didn't have the tools to just be comfortable being me.
Right. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. I mean, what we did was we used food and alcohol, drugs, behavioral addictions to feel better, to feel different, to assuage the anxiety, right? To start to go into a numbness, really.
That's right. And just to take away any of the feelings, any of the normal feelings of social anxiety. Because let's face it, social anxiety is everywhere. Everybody has it to some
Hmm.
greater or
Sure.
lesser degree in different situations. I couldn't stand it. I
Yeah.
could not stand it to the point where I had to do anything and would do anything to avoid it.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I love it. I mean, I don't love it for you, but I understand the journey. um, you had some behavioral addictions. I'll start that over because I hit something,
Yeah.
Drew. You had some behavioral addictions. I know it sounds like your dad might have been maybe a gambler. Gambling addiction can be a behavioral addiction to get the pop, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that he certainly liked the juice of risking it all, and
Hmm.
uh, he wasn't a casino or a betting shop gambler, but he'd bet the farm every day, with his businesses,
Right.
and I developed something similar, and you know, but it was always around intensity. I was looking for intensity of feeling that
Yeah.
I could attach to something that was physically going on, whether it be work or whether it be bungee jumping or
Yeah.
driving cars too fast or whatever it was. If I could get the sense of adrenaline and fear was to do with something that I was doing rather than just a natural state that I seemed to be in most of the time.
Yeah.
I I could sort of justify it existing in me. I could be
Right.
okay with that fear coursing through my body. And
Right.
yet I was not okay with that fear coursing through my body if there was no apparent reason. And similarly with anger, if I was if I was angry about something as a child, I was certainly not allowed to be angry. If I was
Right.
angry, it was just unacceptable
Right.
to my mother or my father. And so as a young man, I was seriously angry, and I had a bit to be angry about, but I was very angry, and so I wanted that anger to sort of have some reason for being. I needed
Right.
to justify and somehow explain away to myself why that anger was. So I'd get involved in ridiculous, fights and football hooliganism and stuff like that, just purely and simply to find an outlet for, or find a grounding somewhere for the anger
Hmm.
that I felt in me.
Yeah.
Uh,
Don't you think we can be addicted to anger and create drama so we can get angry, so we can
I don't know
have that
about
intensity?
addicted to anger. I think we can get addicted to intensity,
Yeah.
certainly, and being angry is quite
Right.
intense.
Right.
I think being addicted to a feeling is not really where we go. Yes, we can get into a pattern where we seem to get locked into a feeling,
Hmm.
but I don't think that we actually get addicted to a feeling. Search of adventure was my was my
Yeah.
sort of motto. What are
Right.
we doing? I said, I'm in search of adventure.
Right.
And that's how I lived my life. I was constantly looking for the next high.
Right. It sounds like maybe you were like me, that you were a commodities trader, and there is intensity, pressure, stress in there. And I used work as another addiction.
Absolutely, work's been a huge diversion from me facing reality.
Hmm.
I'm too busy to look at myself because
Right.
I'm
Yes.
frightfully important and I've got things to
Right.
do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the truth is that I used work a lot as an escape so that I
Hmm.
didn't have to face me.
Right. And we are talking to you as a food addict and a professional who works in the food addiction recovery. You've authorized us to use your last name.
Yeah,
So I just want to make that clear to the listeners. And anonymity is important in the programs we work. So we talk about 12-step recovery, not specifically about the programs we work, right?
correct. So
Hmm.
I've I've been in a variety of programs
Hmm.
because I have so many different addictions. Uh, you know
Yeah.
that I have to uh, honor those 12-step programs.
Sure.
They've saved my life.
Yeah, they have. Yeah.
They're the
Yeah.
only thing, the only constant in my life that's continued to save my bacon again and again and again.
Again and again, and we do it every day. So
Yeah.
you talked about work addiction, gambling addiction. There was a sex addiction you talked about, and anything you want to say about that? I think you went to
Well,
Arizona for a while.
yeah, I was 5 years clean and went into another treatment center
Hmm.
uh, to deal with what was another issue that was destroying my life, which was sex. And I was using sex just like I used a drug.
Yeah.
I used it. I used it daily just to escape
Hmm.
reality,
Yeah.
and it was a high, just like drugs, just like food, just like gambling, just like all of the other addictions.
Hmm.
And I was lucky enough to go and spend some time in a really good facility
Treatment
and
center. Yeah.
center in the US, and
Yeah.
it really led me to getting on the road to helping people as well as helping myself. That
Yeah.
was the catalyst where I saw people really doing deeper work than just dealing with denial and what have you. And I
Hmm.
saw able to go down deep into themselves and do some of the deep process work
Hmm.
uh, that I think really has made an extraordinary difference to my life. It's meant that I can turn up and show up and be the
And
man
B.
that I am today in my life that I
Yeah.
never have been able to do had I not have dealt with some of those things.
Yeah. That's getting
And
chills. Yeah. You've had substance abuse, substances being drugs, alcohol. We know that food is a substance. You've had gambling, work addiction, sex addiction, um, and so you've had the gamut. I'm sure you've worked a number of programs
yeah,
on this, but everyone served a purpose for you to in your life at that time. But then they stop working, right?
they all were doing something for me that I couldn't
Right.
somehow do for myself. They were all giving me that ease and comfort that I so badly wanted all the time. I wanted that ease and comfort that I experienced when I was high or using food or whatever else I was doing, and so I wanted that ease and comfort all the time. I didn't want to feel discomfort.
Right.
Uh, I'm almost, people talk about having an allergy, and I think I'm allergic to feeling bad, and that's
Yeah.
that really my problem is that I'm unwilling, or I think that it shouldn't be necessary for me to feel bad. I want to feel good all the time, and
Hmm.
that's just that's such a sort of immature uh, childish sort of view of the world.
Well, that's what we were taught, right? That's what you were taught, that it's not okay to feel. But we know that we have feelings come up. We can get very scared. We can get angry. We can be upset. Somebody's not doing something we want. But the feelings are not forever. That's what we learn after we realize that we were
That's right.
masking them.
And that's what I learned when I came into recovery, is that
Yeah,
I could sit with feelings. I could
right.
actually spend some time feeling
Hmm.
uncomfortable, and the world didn't end. I didn't die.
Yeah.
I always thought that somehow that I'd die if I felt all my and now it's exactly the opposite. I feel more alive when I feel.
Right. We're meant to feel, right?
Isn't that extraordinary that
Right.
that 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 it literally felt impossible that I was going to die, and
Yeah.
now it's actually what I crave. I crave to feel my
Right.
feelings now. I
Yeah.
really, that's what I crave today,
Right.
is connection with people and feeling that warmth of connection. And what goes along with that is my sadness, is my fear, is my anger, is my
Right.
guilt, is my shame.
Right. So
You
what we
know,
use now is programs of recovery, right? Rather than
that's right.
using a substance or a behavior, we talk
Yeah,
about it, write about it, pray about it. We get it out. We talk about, I'm sad. My friend is sick. I'm sad.
yeah.
And that's natural.
Well, it's natural for some people. It's still, I have to say, I still have to be prompted, and
Me too. Yeah.
have to do a daily, almost like checklist. Okay,
Right.
it's okay to feel these feelings,
Right.
because at some level, deep down inside me, I still think, after nearly 40 years, that it's not okay to feel shame. It's not okay to feel fear, you
Right.
know, and that's despite the work that I do on myself, and the work that I do with other
Do with
people.
others. Yeah.
So and I'm it's been a fascinating journey, because
Yeah.
working with other people has been the piece that's really given me a lot more satisfaction than anything else in my life.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
know?
I'm reading a book right now called The Wounded Healer. It's an old book, but I think that's what you are. I see myself that way. I see others that have recovered from food addiction and addictions. They're wounded, and they.
Don't use the term recovered. I'm a recovering.
Okay. I
I'm
use
not.
the word recovered because
I'm
there are
not.
big book references about
Yeah,
that. I
and
shouldn't say big book. Let me start that over. There is literature within our recovery programs that say recovered is the right word. There are people, I say I'm recovered, not cured.
I don't say recovered at all. I'm not
You say
recovered.
recovering.
I'm, yeah, because I'm not. Because I'm one second away from, or one bite, one
Hmm.
hit, one toke away from being back in the shtuk.
Yeah,
So I
I get
I
it.
don't, I don't say I'm
Yeah,
recovering, but
yeah,
not recovered.
I get it. I get the distinction. I go to the literature on this one.
Mm. But it's
Recovered, not cured. We can talk offline about that one.
yeah. I
Let's
think it's
talk
dangerous.
about,
I think it's dangerous. It's dangerous thing thought for me to think that I'm recovered. I
yes, I
don't
understand that. Yeah,
ever want to think that I'm recovered and I've got this, because
yeah,
there's been times of my life where that's not been the case. And
I
when I
understand.
when I've relapsed, and relapse is a big part of my story,
Hmm.
it's taken me to some seriously dark places.
Yeah,
Uh, with
yeah,
suicidal
yeah.
ideation, and and
Ooh,
so I know that I'm not recovered.
okay,
I have a daily reprieve, and I'm nowhere near being recovered,
good.
because if I was recovered, I wouldn't need the program anymore.
Right.
That's my
Well,
that.
there's a distinction there. We won't argue that out here, but I want to talk about your food addiction. In
Sure.
1987, you say you got sober, clean and sober from drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
And then I think your weight got up to
Yeah.
365. Do I have that number right?
That's right.
You
Yeah,
began using food. And that was probably, like many of us, your original addiction as a kid to cope. You got into alcohol, drugs, and then food is still there. So you knew, I think, from the recovery program you went into for drugs and alcohol that it works. And so tell me about how you first identified that you might need compulsive overeating, food addiction recovery.
interestingly, when I first went to rehab in the UK in
Hmm.
1987, there was a sweetie cupboard in the treatment
Oh,
centre where you could go and eat any chocolates at any time of the day or night you wanted, if you felt like it, because there was this thought in those days that, alcohol's a sugar, you're just replacing the sugar that you've lost with a chocolate bar rather than alcohol. And they do use the same neural pathways. They are very similar, alcohol and sugar. In fact, alcohol is just a sugar. But for me, what that meant was that I just replaced one addiction really with a full-blown sugar addiction,
yeah.
and I ate God knows how many chocolate bars a day,
Mm,
early part of recovery, and very quickly started putting on weight.
yeah.
uh, you know when I was my lowest weight when I was using drugs was about 110, 115 pounds, 110
Oh,
pounds,
my.
and my high weight has been 365. So there's
Mm,
huge variance of
yeah.
body size.
Right.
And I've now I'm just under 200 pounds.
Yeah.
uh,
Good.
so I'm still losing a pound or so a month, and I'm happy to
Hmm.
do it.
Yeah.
But I'm not, you know I haven't dieted since I've been in food recovery.
Yeah. Me
uh,
neither.
I just can't do it.
I can't do it either. Another failure. I can do it. You're probably
And
good like me at it.
so such a great
I'm a
such a
great
great
dieter.
time,
Yes.
you know but that all that meant really was that I was really good at restricting, and when I was restricting on food, I was probably more crazy than I was when I was overeating.
Yeah.
And what that
How
looked like
so?
was that my ego would switch around, from feeling
Mm.
absolutely despondent and worthless as getting fatter and bigger, that once I started dieting and started thinking that I had a control over it, my ego knew no bounds, and I'd feel invincible, and I'd feel
Hmm.
that I had all the answers, and
Yeah.
so
Me
I was
too. Yeah.
unbearable to be around when I was losing. When I was losing weight, I was unbearable to be around, and when I was gaining weight, I was unbearable to be around, but for very different reasons.
But overall, you were unbearable to be
Yeah,
around.
I was hard work to be around. I was not easy, not an easy one.
I know when I was dieting, like you were saying about feeling like, okay, I found the answer. I'm going to lose weight with this diet. I'm going to fix this weight problem, this food problem with this diet. There's a high in that. There's also a physical high from restricting, which is like the lightheadedness from not eating enough and the stomach grumbling. Like, okay, now I'm going to lose weight because I feel this way, right?
I think it's about feeling power and feeling control over my body. And I and
Yeah,
I would feel very charged and very excited by those feelings of that hunger pain, uh, when I was starving, and I'd lost huge amounts of weight in various diets. I've lost over 1,200 pounds in
yeah,
major diets. So I know what that power. It's almost like, well, I have the answers now. I can control this. I'm bigger than this. And
right.
yet it was always illusionary. It was always temporary, because there was always this sensation like I was on a bungee cord, and I'd been dropped, and I was going down, 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 down. But at some point I was going to reach the maximum stretch, and then I was going to bounce all the way back up. And that's what I did weight wise. I'd go down and I'd get to my goal weight and go, yeah, and celebrate. And in moments, it seemed like I was back at a higher number on the scales than I'd ever been before. So
Right.
I could diet, but I got to the point where I just thought I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And if you think about the weight of 1,200 pounds, losing that in major diets, that's not in just the Monday morning I'm going to be good again. This was in major sort of weight loss regimes. So I was always starving myself or always gorging. There was never a time when I didn't do either or.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. It wasn't like, why can't you eat in moderation, Susan? And moderation doesn't doesn't work for addicts, right?
But I didn't really want. Did I want moderation? I may have yearned it deep down, but I thought it was. I thought that moderation was mediocre, and
Yeah.
that there was something sort of obscene about being in moderation.
Yeah.
I remember. I just didn't think that I was like other people on the planet. I remember as a young kid coming back from school, probably 11 or 12, and I looked out the bus window and I saw somebody cleaning their car in their driveway. And I just thought, how do you do that? How do you have a normal life? That's not that's not possible for me.
It's a doll.
I'm never going to have that normal life. I'm never going to be able to do regular things. I'm always going to be doing something crazy. For me, it was almost a crime in my family to be dull.
Yeah.
It was the biggest offence of all. You could do anything else, but don't be dull.
Don't be dull.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and, uh,
Let's
and
talk
that
about your let's talk about your food recovery because you got it. Okay, so you did what I did, which is you got sober using food. I couldn't have done both at the same time. You did that.
I got sober using food, and then some years later, uh,
2010. I have.
2010-ish, I guess,
Okay.
something. And my a family member, my my mum, whose past was in 12 step, and she was a food addict too.
Okay.
Uh, but another family member got uh, abstinent with the food,
Okay.
and I saw the lights come on again
Mm,
in their eyes,
in them.
and it was magical watching it, and it was terrifying knowing that it was me too. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and and so I ended up going to 12
12
step.
step food recovery program. Yeah.
And I had a good period of abstinence, and
Yeah.
it was extraordinary. And then when I broke, it was really difficult.
Yeah.
It was really hard, uh, and it was just impossible to somehow get back. And I was getting bigger and bigger and bigger,
Yeah.
and I was miserable.
So I want to make sure that the listener is following your journey, which in a lot of years here, okay. But you got into a food addiction recovery 12-step program in 2010, from what I understand, and you got some abstinence. But I had in my notes that you were less obese, but you never got down to necessarily a healthy weight, and you continued to struggle until um, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. This is your story, but I think COVID came around in
Yeah.
2020, right?
So yeah, I mean, the first time I started dealing with my food, I went to a 12-step meeting, and I think that I in that meeting, I was very moved. I was full of tears, full of sort of feelings, And I sort of admitted that I had a problem in that meeting, and admitted that I couldn't do it anymore, that my life was chaos, and that I somehow believed the people in the meeting were dealing with it, and I wanted it, so I was prepared to do what they'd done to get
Okay.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I was really excited by recovery, and it's been a it's been a an amazing journey. Yet when I broke, I could not get back. I was going to meetings online and trying to trying to I was trying to get a day or two, trying to get another day, and couldn't, and was really struggling. And it was during COVID that I actually got sick, and was lying in my bed, desperately unwell, breathing really badly, and being 300 odd, 350, 360 pounds is not a
Mm.
pretty
Yeah.
place to be when you're struggling to breathe and you're carrying that much weight. And I got an email, and it referred me to a uh, a new treatment centre that was potentially opening, and I called the person there and then and spoke to them,
Mm-hmm.
and somehow that making that call and saying I can't do this again was
Right.
enough to open the me to the grace that led me back to abstinence and 12-step recovery, and
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yeah.
been an
That's
extraordinary
wonderful.
journey.
So, yeah, I think I understand the sequence of events, and it sounds like that's when you really got it and really surrendered to your food addiction. And then I assume that your weight went from 300 down. I mean, we don't really focus on weight when we recover as much as we do just the emotional sobriety, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, the weight's important too.
Yeah,
The
it
weight,
is. Physical recovery is important, right?
physical recovery is another piece of it, and
Right.
it's not the only piece, but it's an important piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the it's it's interesting that we don't want it to mean so much, and yet it does mean quite a lot
Yeah,
in
it does, but we don't focus on it entirely, and
don't
as we did with diets, right?
and absolutely right. We don't focus on it. We don't you know there's a big thing, focus on your recovery and you lose the weight. Focus on the
Yes.
weight, you lose your recovery.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And so it's very important to focus on your recovery, and the weight just goes as a symptom or as a consequence of your addiction. And
Hmm.
the consequence of my addiction,
Yeah, I want
weight
to. We.
weight has disappeared as I've dealt with my addiction. For years I thought the only thing to do was to deal with symptoms in my life. Whether it be
Yeah.
not enough money, uh, relationships that are chaos, overweight. If I deal with the symptoms, I'll be okay. And in fact,
Yeah.
what we learn very quickly and what we teach in Shift very specifically is that we focus on the addiction at the core of those symptoms, and they eventually all those symptoms get taken care of.
Hmm.
So it's really important to see, yes, the weight's important. Yes, the weight hurts your body and it's
Hmm.
unhealthy and all the rest of it.
Hmm.
And yet you can't deal with your addiction just by dealing with the weight.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, if you focus on the food and the weight like we did with diets for so many years, and not focus on the causes and conditions, as we say, and what's causing you to want to shift your mood, what's causing problems in your life, then that's the recovery. And the time we have left, I really want to get to a few things here, but I don't want to run out of time.
Yeah, one
Um,
other thing that I would say around that is that if your issue is just obesity, then you can deal with the obesity,
yeah,
right, by focusing on the weight. But if you've got a problem called
yeah,
food addiction, doesn't matter how many times you deal
yes,
with the obesity, the addiction's not been dealt with. So you have, I,
yes.
I know for me that unless I'm dealing with my addiction, that just dealing with the weight's never going to work.
Right, I understand, and that's profound, and that is exactly at the core of this. And I want to give you a chance to talk about that and your work with Shift. And of course, you're based in the UK, and
Yeah,
when there's a Shift intensive,
yeah,
Amanda Leith
we had
owns.
we had a shift intensive in Margate in the UK last year. Hopefully, we'll be
Okay,
having more of them. And and I
oh, it
do
was
stuff.
before the conference, right? The
That's right. And I do
in
stuff,
May. Yes.
and I do stuff online in the UK too. And I'm
Okay.
lucky enough to to work with shift that have been, you know, I mean, I've worked in drug and alcohol treatment,
Sure.
and the difference between the treatment, the quality of treatment with shift and all the other treatment providers that I've ever seen is extraordinary. You know,
Good. That's high praise.
the level of care and the level of attention that
Yeah.
we give in shift is unbelievable. The
Yeah.
program,
They're a sponsor. Yeah.
yeah.
I want to talk about that, but I want to focus. Yeah.
They're
Go
the
ahead.
so the intensives themselves are fantastic. They're 7 8 days of really
Right.
in-depth stuff, and we look at lots of deep processing work, and we look at the steps, and we look at other bits and pieces. It's a 12-step treatment,
Base
and
program.
then afterwards you get aftercare, a 3 hour session once a week plus half an hour one to one.
Right.
The level of care is extraordinary, and
Yeah.
and it's very focused on food addiction.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been, I want to go here. I've gone through a shift, 5-day intensive with Amanda and Phil Wardell when he was still alive, who owned Acorn, the predecessor company. And I believe in it. This is probably the biggest ad for a shift that we can make. But um, what do you see? And if you can kind of do this maybe in a minute, just tell the listeners. I think you just did, but what goes on there? We kind of, it's a circle. There's check-ins and so forth.
Yeah, there's check-ins, and it's gone from 5 days to 7 days,
Good.
8 days. It's now got an aftercare program. It's now got
Yeah.
one-on-one sessions
Yeah.
after we've finished.
Right.
It's a really supportive environment where you can actually begin your withdrawal from food. Withdrawal from food is a real thing.
Right.
People feel lousy. Part of the reason why you can't do it on your own is because that withdrawal keeps on hooking you back in.
Right.
It wants you to come back all the time, just like with a, a drug or alcohol
Yeah.
addict. The withdrawal is real,
It's real.
and sugar withdrawals are painful. Caffeine withdrawals are
Yes.
painful. It's and yet doing it in a supportive environment makes it eminently doable, and not, I wouldn't say
Yeah.
easy, but not far off easy. Doing
Hmm.
it alongside other people that are doing it at the same time as you means that you're not doing it alone, and other people know exactly what you're doing. uh, and there's serious support for doing so. uh, so that's part of it. But really, the big part is actually understanding your powerlessness and
Yeah.
understanding that you need to surrender to a program and not think that you have all the answers.
Right.
The biggest thing that a food addict can learn is that they have no business making decisions around food,
Hmm.
and that can be terrifying for a food
Yeah.
addict, that they don't actually have the ability to make good, healthy decisions around food.
Yeah.
So getting out of that control is really scary for a lot of food addicts. So that
Yeah.
we spend a lot of time doing that, and we process a lot of really deep, old feelings that
Hmm.
have been stuck. Because I always say you don't bury feelings dead, you bury feelings alive, and they're still in there.
Yeah.
So that they keep coming up, even if we don't want them to, and they get in the way,
Yeah.
and they
They do
get
get
in
in
the
the way.
way. And I always say, what's in the way is the way. So
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
feelings are getting in the way, they're probably the way forward.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There's a lot that goes on at the shift intensives, and congratulations to you and the others and Amanda that do that work. A couple of more questions, and we're out of time. Yeah, highly recommended shift. You say your mission. You may not have remembered saying this to me, but I wrote it down. You say your mission is to help souls fly. Help souls
Yeah.
fly. Tell me what you mean by that. You're a wounded healer.
Well,
Tell me your
yeah,
work.
I did an intense weekend. It was some men's work back in '93 that really started me in the role of healing and teaching and stuff.
Hmm.
And part of my weekend was to look at and to discover what my real mission was in life.
Mm.
And I had a vision of all these kites, these beautiful myriad of kites flying in a sunny blue sky,
Mm.
and and I knew, looking at them, that they were people's souls, that
Oh,
they were flying their kites were their souls, and they were all playing together. And I saw my role in the world as helping other people fly those kites. So
oh,
helping people help people fly their souls, and
oh, that's wonderful. I've got talk about feeling. I've got full body chills here. That's really cool. Yeah.
and that's really my passion, and that's my work, is to
Yeah.
help someone.
I can see the recovery in you. It's so clear to me, and I can see that you're at a good place. You're about, let's see, 3 years younger than me. And so it's been a journey. It would have been nice to have gotten all this when we were about 25 and life would have been maybe
Well,
easier, but who
no,
knows?
I needed the life I had.
Yeah.
And yes, it could have come 25, 30, 40 years earlier. But who knows? Who
Yeah.
knows?
We wouldn't have as much experience to pass along, right?
I wouldn't be the person I am today without the life I had.
Yeah, and indeed, same here. All right, final question. We didn't get to the ashram. You lived in an ashram for 5 years. I know you're a big believer in meditation. So am I. I
Yeah.
meditate every day. Uh, I want a combination, kind of a combination. I want to talk, if you can talk about the meditation and how important that is to you, along with what would you say to a man or woman out there who might be listening, who can't figure this food thing out, can't figure their weight out, anything about hope or what you would say to them?
I'd say there is an alternative. There is a way. Just keep keep showing up to life,
Hmm.
and hopefully we'll run into each other, and I can let you know what worked for me, and it might well work for you too.
Yeah,
Because it worked for me, why shouldn't it work for you?
right.
And I think that's, because if it worked for me, it can work for anybody.
Yeah,
I was an addict of the hopeless variety.
right.
I was a low bottom food addict, and I couldn't imagine life without being in the food. And today, food takes up so little thought. It's
Right.
bizarre, and it was so important to me. And today it's just a necessity. It's a fuel, but I'm not in love with it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was in
Yeah.
love for many, many years. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I ever was. I think I was gripped by this thing that I call
Mm.
addiction. And I'm no longer.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And I think what happened to you is what happened to me is you wanted it badly enough. You wanted to live another way and you wanted to live, right?
Absolutely. But you have to get to the point where living with the pain of doing it becomes bigger than the living with the pain of facing it.
Mm. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
at that point, miracles can happen.
Mm.
At that spectacular things can happen that we have no understanding or control of, but they happen. And they happen so
Yeah.
regularly. I see it again and again and again. And that's why I continue to do this work, because, I'm living a life of service and seeing miracles happen again and again and again. What could be what could be more fulfilling than that? And it isn't
Nothing.
it isn't me that's doing it. It isn't the person that's doing it. It's some energy force that is working through all and everybody
Yeah.
that gets
Spiritual
the
solution. Yeah.
it's,
Higher power, whatever you want to call it. There's something else, right?
that's right. So meditation is part and parcel of that.
Yeah. Getting in touch with the spiritual part, getting quiet, right? And just
And I've
seeing what
always
the messages are.
I've always been a seeker, in
Yeah.
some weird, wonderful way. Even through my drug use, I was heading off to India and God knows where else, thinking that I
I
would
get it. Me too. Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
find it somewhere else. But in fact, finding it within has been has been just miraculous.
Yeah.
And it's led me to a life of service, which
Right. Helping
is
others see it
beautiful.
too and helping others. It's been an honor to host you, Barney. I've loved it. Loved every minute spending with you in our preparation time and
Yeah.
during this podcast. I know Esther will love it. I know you have a certification from her wonderful school. INFACT School is if anybody's out there in the UK or wherever, how can they reach you?
They can reach me. How can they reach me? Good question. So if they Google Barney Reason, they will find
Yes.
me.
Yeah, in the UK on
UK.
ChatGPT, they'll
Yeah. Well,
find
they'll
you.
find
That's where
me,
I found you. Yeah.
and I have various contacts out there that
Yeah.
are findable. So
Yeah.
do call me.
Good. Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm sure Amanda will be happy with the podcast. And I appreciate your time and the preparation and being here and being a guest on Esther's podcast. Thank you.
Much love. Thank you.